Our next presentation is the long-term variation breeding, populations of cormorants and herons at Clear Lake, and it was written by Floyd Hayes with Brian McIntosh and Doug Wiederman. Brad Barnwell and myself contributed as a part of the science, and Floyd couldn't be here today, so I will try to do my best. He's an awesome speaker, and he was the one that did our grebe monitoring. Clear Lake and adjacent wetlands are severely impaired with a long history of human activity, including contamination of mercury from the nearby mine, invasive species of aquatic plants and fishes, applications of pesticides and herbicides to control the pests, loss of wetlands due to modification and reclamation of agriculture, and cultural eutrophication from excessive nutrient loading. In 1949, 54, and 57, massive amounts of the organochlorine pesticide DDT were dumped in the lake in an attempt to control aquatic larvae of Clear Lake gnat. Shortly after the second and third applications, large numbers of dead western and Clark's grebes were found along the shoreline. Subsequent studies revealed elevated concentrations of DDT in the tissues of several fishes, frogs, and the peciferous grebes, providing the first documented instance of biomagnification in which toxic chemicals accumulated in increasingly high numbers from lower to higher trophic level organisms. Although the devastating effects of DDT on Clear Lake's grebes are well documented, resulting in mass mortality of adults and cessation of breeding followed by a gradual, multi-decadal recovery of their breeding populations, little is known regarding the impact of DDT on other birds, including cormorants and herons. No information is available on DDT populations of colonial breeding herons. Double-crested cormorants are colonial water birds that seek aquatic bodies big enough to support their mostly fish diet. They're known to fly up to 40 miles to a feeding area. They tend to form breeding colonies in clusters in trees or near water, given the potential threats of habitat loss, water diversion, introduced species, bioaccumulation, and biomagnification of toxic chemicals, climate change, and other threats to water birds. Monitoring their populations and habitats is crucial for evaluating their conservation status, detecting long-term population trends, assessing habitat quality, and documenting the effects of environmental changes. The management practices on water birds is also discussed in the paper. Floyd summarizes the long-term variations in breeding populations of cormorants and herons at Clear Lake based on data previously published in surveys from 93 to 99 and surveys 2006 to 24. He discusses the potential causes of variation and provides suggestions for future grebe monitoring. Great blue herons mostly breed colonies located within 2 to 4 miles of their feeding areas. Clear Lake is formed of 3 major arms, and these major wetlands along there occur in large tributaries at the northwest end of the lake, Middle Creek and Rodman Slough area, and at the outlet at the southeast end of the lake, Anderson Marsh and Cache Creek, and in many shallow areas along the margins of the lake, especially at the mouths of the tributaries. Riparian forests dominated by willow, valley oak, Fremont cottonwood, and California sycamore occur along the shores and tributaries and portions of the lake, providing nesting habitat for cormorants and herons. Urban development occurs along the shore in several areas along the lake, but not in Rodman Slough, Anderson Marsh, and most of Cache Creek. Recreational boating and fishing are extremely popular, with dozens of hundreds of watercraft on the lake during fair weather. In our Christmas bird counts in 1997, we reported 62 great blue herons, and in 2023, we only had 32 birds, so it's a decrease of almost 50%. The great egret eats mainly small fish, but also eats amphibians, reptiles, birds, small mammals, and invertebrates. It hunts in belly deep or shallower water, alone or in groups. And we know Lake County's precipitation occurs mostly during October to May and rarely June to September, with the water level typically highest in February to April, declining in summer and lowest in October to December. Water level at Lakeport, the west shore of the upper arm, during our study period of 2006 to 24 varied dramatically, ranging from 10.58 Rumsey in 2017 to negative 2.74 Rumsey in 22, well within the historical extremes. Black-crowned night herons can be found in Lake County all year, with highest numbers during summer breeding. They require aquatic habitat for foraging and terrestrial vegetation for cover. Our Christmas bird count in 1997, we had 32 black-crowned night herons, and then this past year, only 9. So again, it shows a decrease. Like black-crowned night herons, the smaller green heron also uses tools to fish. They're a very secretive bird, and during nesting, they're very hard to detect. In the Clear Lake Oak Keys, breeding pairs were first observed in 2023 and in 2024, and we had 3 successful nests observed in the same location. And this is actually right next to my house, and this year we had 2 pairs, and they both nested twice. So we had 5, 10, 14 chicks hatched and fledged successfully. And previous research. In 1895, not 1995, there was a colony of 100 double-crested cormorants at Reeves Point. And it's a quote that he said it was an immense colony of double-crested cormorants, half a mile across the Narrows. So there were larger populations back then. Rood in 1965 documented the demise of Clear Lake's breeding grebes after the applications of DDD in 49, 54, and 57. The populations of egrets and herons are also lower than in former years. And then Wolf and Norman said in 1993 they did their first comprehensive studies in multiple breeding colonies, up to 210 nests of double-crested cormorants, then up to 286 of great blue herons. No nesting great egrets were reported, and we're not sure if they just decided not to count them or they were not there. And only 3 nesting black-crowned night herons were reported. And then Schuford in 2010 said that in 1995 to 2000, the breeding surveys of double-crested cormorants were up to 375 nests of double-crested cormorants. The methods used. In 2006 through 24, when Floyd was doing the Reeves survey, he documented all his heron sightings and cormorants. They searched for colonies from canoe, motorboat, or land, and I believe he said he did like 10,000 miles during that paddle time. Yeah, they counted or estimated the number of nests at each colony. There were inconsistent sampling with more sampling done during other years. And a lot of that was because of water level. The statistical analysis, they compared years with large colonies sampled at Rodman Slough, the Upper Arm, and Cache Creek, and simple linear regressions were used to test the number of grebes versus year, number of nests versus water level on March 15, which is early in the breeding season. And the results? We had 9 colony sites, 2 in Rodman Slough, 6 in the Upper Arm, 1 in the Oaks Arm, 1 in Cache Creek, and there was considerable annual fluctuations in the colony sites. And here it lists all the sites that we monitor consistently. And then Rodman Slough. Two colony sites, Long Tule Point and Cache Creek, were active each year, surveyed for 14 years, and one site at Quercus Point was active each year for 10 years. And then there were 10 colony sites abandoned without being reused in the study period. Upper Rodman Slough was active each year from 2011 to 2019, but no nests were found during the surveys of 23 and 24, which was very unusual. And Lower Rodman Slough, it was active each year during 2011 to 2014, but not during 2016 to 19 or 2024. Two colony sites, Willow Point and Reeves Point, were intermittently active and inactive. The Lions Creek colony site was first detected in 2024, and Kelsey Creek colony site was first colonized by a single pair of great blue herons in 2021 in an area that was frequented by birders and hadn't been seen in the previous 20 years. And then nests at Clear Lake Oaks wetlands were first detected in 2020, but may have been previously overlooked. And we have someone directly across that said they were there since 2017 that you know of. And again, it's just we need citizen scientists. Just let us know if you see a colony. Just send us an email. Rodman Slough. And then, despite inconsistencies in our survey of breeding cormorants and herons, such as that not all colony sites were surveyed annually, the surveys occurred at different stages of the breeding season, and more than one survey in a breeding season for each colony site. Our data revealed several fluctuations in the presence and number of nests in each of the species at the colony sites, and two long-term trends. The higher number of double-crested cormorant and great blue heron nests in 93 and 94, compared with our surveys in 2006 to 24, revealed a statistically significant negative trend for each of the species, in contrast to the dramatic increases in breeding populations of the western grebes and Clark's grebes from 92 to 19. The large number of nests of cormorants in 1895 suggests that the breeding population prior to the 20th century was even higher. If these trends are genuine rather than artifacts of small sample size from a population that varies greatly over time, the environmental drivers of these trends is difficult to identify. Because breeding population surveys of cormorants and herons didn't begin until more than 4 decades after the applications of DDD on Clear Lake, the immediate and long-term effects of DDD are unknown. Although DDD concentrations in feathers, tissues, and eggs of Clear Lake grebes steadily declined in the 1960s and 1970s, no such studies were conducted on the lake's cormorants and herons until 93-94, with much lower and sublethal concentrations of DDD and DDE were resulted from the breakdown of DDT were found in the tissues of double-crested cormorants and great blue herons. These studies revealed a gradual decline in the lake's pesticides, which clearly didn't contribute to the recent declines of the double-crested cormorant and the great blue heron since 1993. So there's no significant relationship between the number of nests and the water level. And because breeding population surveys of cormorants and herons didn't begin until more than 4 decades after the last application. I'm sorry. I think I'm supposed to be on the next slide. Yep. Okay, sorry. The black-crowned night herons nested at 5 colony sites with a maximum count of a single site sample of 102 nests at Willow Point in 2016, and a maximum annual count for the lake of 109 nests at 2 sites in 2024. Wolf and Norman reported only 3 nests at Corcus Point in 93-94, and then we never have detected nesting there. The species was the only heron nesting at Willow Point, where 32 out of 104 nests, 32 to 104 nests were tallied annually between 2009 and 2016, mostly at Library Park, with smaller numbers within the 3 city blocks to the west. And in 2017 to 2019, which most of you will remember, that's when the loudspeakers with the cries of raptors and herons in distress were broadcast from the loudspeakers in the trees at Library Park in an effort to discourage herons from nesting. The colony site was not surveyed during 20 to 23, but 95 nests were counted in 2024, and only one of those was in Library Park. The others were about 150 meters to the south in a campground. There was no significant trend in the number of nests over time from 2009 to 24, although the counts revealed highest numbers in May and June. 95 nests were tallied at Willow Point in March, and there was no significant relationship between the number of nests and the water level. Mercury contamination may have also adversely impacted the cormorants and herons. Mercury was intermittently mined, and the open pit mining began in 1927. Elevated but sublethal mercury concentrations were found in the tissues of the cormorants. But right now, mercury is presumably declining in the lake's cormorants and herons, and it's unlikely to have contributed to the decline of their breeding populations since 1993. These are young green herons that I took from my backyard. Habitat loss may reduce the carrying capacity of breeding cormorants and herons. An estimated 85% of Clear Lake's natural wetlands have been destroyed. Cormorants and herons depend on the tall broadleaf trees for nesting, but no loss of trees has occurred at any of the 10 colonies, so habitat loss is unlikely to have contributed to the recent declines of all the species since 1993. And this is the graph that he put together, and it shows beginning with the double-crested cormorants, their numbers, the highest was 400, and then in 2025, we had less than 100. And then great blue herons, the high counts were almost 300. In 2005, we're down to below 100. Same with great egrets. They weren't counted previously. We had high counts of up to 30 nests, and then this year under 5. And black-crowned night herons, our high counts were up to the 100. And again, this year, because I think we've noticed new rookeries, it was 100. But in 2010, it was between right around 30. There was no significant relationship between the water level for any of the species. And our conclusions. Breeding populations of double-crested cormorant and great blue heron appear to be declining. No significant trend in breeding populations of great egret and black-crowned night herons, but fewer data. And no significant relationship with water level for any species. There's no known causal factor for the decline in breeding double-crested cormorant and great blue heron, but possibly due to population fluctuations of prey. Future monitoring is needed to document the trends in breeding populations and environmental drivers of change. As I mentioned earlier, Redbud Audubon does a Christmas bird count, usually the third weekend in December. And these are just a few of our facts from 1997. If we looked at great blue herons, we had 62, and then great blue herons last year, 32. And some of the other ones I just threw in there for you were western grebes in 97 was 1,844, and 2023 is 219. And we have dedicated citizens monitoring the same area in a 24-hour period. And this is just an example of the numbers decrease. Our mallards went from 711 to 424, and citizens actually do count every single species we see. And this is Floyd Hayes, who should be here instead of me, but he's out of the country, or I think he just arrived back now. And here's his contact information if you'd like to reach him. And we followed all applicable ethical guidelines for the use of birds in research, including those presented in the Ornithological Council's guidelines to use of wild birds in research. And funding was provided directly by a Herber Family Faculty Development Grant and the Margaret Hughes Faculty Research Fund of Pacific Union College, and indirectly by Audubon California, Luckenbach Trustee Council, National Audubon Society, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Redbud Audubon, and Rhodes Scholar. And for assistance with field work, we'd like to thank Kathy Barnwell, Brett Hayes, Marta Hayes, and Dylan Turner. And that is Floyd's presentation. I don't think we have time for questions.
Did you want to take a question while we start the presentation?
I'll be here all day. And Candace?
Yeah. Where's Willow Point on the lake?
That's a good question. Can someone help me?
Willow Point, is that the campground south of Lakeport?
Yeah. Well, you can walk to it, I think, actually, from Library Park.
Yeah, it's the outflow of Forbes Creek comes out in the middle of Willows Point. It's next to the old T&T building and Disney's boat rental.
I only know everything from the creek. It's like, oh, there's a rookery. Oh, there's one. I don't know the other parts.